This is a reading from The Reenchantment of Everyday Life by Thomas More. In the Poetics of Space, French philosopher Gaston Bachelard describes home poetically. All really inhabited space, he writes, bears the essence of home, of the notion of home. We could be anywhere, and this is more now, we could be anywhere out in nature, in someone else's home, or at work, and still feel at home. All that is required, according to Bachelard, is to truly inhabit the space. We inhabit a place when we give something to it and when we receive what it has to offer. Okay. Let that land for a moment. So if I ask you to think about where you find sacred space, I'm guessing, I'm just assuming that most of you would choose a place out in nature. How many of you? Right, okay, massive majority. The view over a lake after a hike, a literal peak experience, maybe the horizon at sunrise, maybe your garden, communing with growing things under your stewardship and care. Well, I am in the minority here, big time, because I find sacred space mostly in cities and human places of culture. And that's where my world has felt most enchanted, magical, and imbued with something numinous. Not exclusively, but often. So how is it that a space becomes sacred? Gaston Bachelard tells us that we have to truly inhabit it, be willing to receive what it has to offer, and to offer ourselves to it. So I think this translates as being in a place of openness, having a kind of permeability around our personal boundaries, and also requires attention. So if I take a walk in the woods, allowing the trees to minister to me, they will, because that's what they do. They have a tremendous energy. They have lives and histories. And when I'm receptive to their presence, and when I notice the sensations of air, wind, sun, or rain, the elements, I'm able to move beyond myself and into a greater reality, which always provides a sense of perspective. We kind of melt away and become part of something much larger, which is, I think, inevitably renewing and refreshing, and you can feel your heart rate slow, and suddenly all the things that were, racing around in your mind just kind of take on less importance. The rehearsing of worries, the rehashing of conversations, the concrete boundaries around the feeling of, and the illusion of separateness and me. And that's a beautiful gift. There is a moment, there's a really beautiful scriptural moment in the Hebrew Bible when Jacob who stole his brother's inheritance, wakes up after having an intense dream during a road trip back to seeing his estranged brother. And he wakes up and he says, something like it, "Surely God is in this place and I did not know it." It's one of the greatest hits of the Bible. Yeah, Jacob. Surely God is in this place, everywhere. You didn't know it because you were caught up in your family conflict and all the stuff you were remembering and worrying about your brother and sibling rivalry and, gee, when I show up, is he going to kill me? Little concerns like that. And you finally got yourself down to sleep and had a big wild vision dream. Sometimes the sacred will come to us in a space, and that's what makes it a sacred space. But mostly, we have to step aside of our daily drama to make ourselves accessible to it. You got to put down the phone and get out of monkey mind. You know what really gets to me is the stories of the people who are like taking the selfies at the edge of the Grand Canyon or the precipice. I mean, they're having a peak experience of beauty in this sacred place. I hope they're not just doing it for Instagram. And they're doing the selfie and, they fall to their deaths. And this happens quite frequently. And then the space becomes sacred for another very tragic reason. So God is in that place, in this place, and we don't know it. Every place, potentially. A place becomes sacred by our intention and by associations we make with the place. Is this somewhere where life is being sustained, renewed, in ways that remind us of the resurrecting, resilient nature of life itself? Is this a place perhaps that holds profound memory for people or non-human animal life that has witnessed loss, death, war, suffering? If you've visited battlefields, you know those are also sacred places. There are lots of ways to find sacred space. But there's another way we can create sacred space that I don't think I've ever talked about with you as a congregation, because the idea is kind of new to me. I'd like to consider it with you this morning. It's coming to me kind of late in life, I guess, that we also create sacred space by the way that we show up in spaces, what we ourselves bring to them. In other words, I think that we ourselves are little mobile units of holy experience by the quality of presence we bring wherever we go. No matter how drab the place, how unenchanted it seems to be, however seemingly detached from any numinous or, holy intention, we can bring a transformative energy and love to a space just the way a taco truck brings food to a city corner. I can be sacred space. I have a few stories, anecdotes to illustrate what I mean. A couple of weeks ago, I was out walking Dibs, my beagle, and a teenage girl walked towards us on Burrell Street by the park. It was a hazy, hot day. Quite frankly, I didn't feel like stopping and visiting with that many people, but I do. So I said a brief hello and I smiled. And she stopped and crossed over to talk to us. And she said, "Hi! Oh my gosh, how is your dog? He looks so good." And I said, "Oh, you're so sweet. He's doing really well. Thanks." Because I greet I greet people all the time in my neighborhood. I'm sort of that good, nosy neighbor who wants to know what's going on, how everybody's doing. And the thing is, though, I do that, but I don't remember who anybody is. I'm terrible that way. So I figure it's okay to keep chatting even if I don't remember that we already met or their names or which house or dog is theirs. But this young lady was very engaged, and she said, "How old is he now? He must be pretty old, right?" And I said, "Wait a minute, are you talking about Max? He was the dog I had before this beagle. He was the little beagle with the white face. He died in 2021. I'm so sorry, but this is Dibley. I've just had him for a year. He's much younger." And the girl said, "Oh no, Max died?" And I go, "Yeah, oh yes, honey, he did." And she goes, "Don't you remember me?" Oh, that's the worst. Oh, and I said something I say a lot, which is, "Remind me." And she said, "I'm the girl you gave the winter coat and gloves and hat to." And this was years ago. She had grown so much, I'd forgotten all about it. She probably was 11 or 12 at the time. It had to have been at least 5 years ago. And we were out walking. I was with my dog. She wasn't dressed warmly on a very cold day. And I just said, "You know what? I've got all these extra coats. Let me set you up." So I brought her to my house and I gave her a coat and some hat and gloves. And I realized this girl's delight in having seen me again. I realized that for her, this stretch of the neighborhood was associated with a memory of goodness and care that remained with her and that I'd been the cause of that. I had been a sacred space for her. I'd been like a resident angel of that space, the way we can be, and it made a blessing for her. But before you give me a halo, let me tell you another story, okay? Because this one's not so pretty. This one's not. I'm also remembering a little neighborhood encounter, a July 3rd night years ago. My neighborhood was, as it always is on July 3rd, crowded with people from all over creation who descend upon Lynn for the fireworks display over Kings Beach. I had been having beers and whatever with friends on the porch a couple doors down, and I was walking home and I saw this person crouched in my garden pulling up my flowers. And I yelled, and I'm not going to really yell as loud as I yelled, but I yelled really loudly, "Hey! Hey, what the hell are you doing?" at this person's back, and they sprang up and turned around, absolutely terrified, to face me, and I saw that this person was holding her phone, and she hadn't been pulling up my flowers at all. She'd been taking beautiful close-up pictures of my garden. And to make matters even worse, I have these little like stakes in my garden that say things like peace. It says blessing. And she was getting pictures of this lovely display only to be brutally attacked and accused of theft and property destruction by the homeowner who put the peace and blessing signs out. This is horrible. She was frozen, and I realized immediately that we had a language barrier, so I could not adequately apologize. I did a lot of gestures indicating how sorry I was, like, "Oh no, I'm so sorry," hand over the heart. "Oh my God," hand over the mouth. Lots of deep bowing. "I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Just trying to indicate I have, that there is no way that I can undo the alarm and the shock and the sense of violence that I had inflicted on her. I had been, in this case, a movable force of interpersonal violence and created probably for her a permanent association of unhappiness and fear. Because I don't know, will she ever walk down that street again? Will she ever take pictures again? I mean, we're laughing, and I know it's a nervous laugh, because it's not funny at all. It was really, really terrible, and only in promising to do better and recognizing my impact on spaces that I am in can I begin to redeem the destructive moment that I created between myself and another person. It's humbling. One more story. On Wednesday night, this past Wednesday, I was with friends on the Boston Common seeing a production of Macbeth. You can say it if you're not in a theater. Okay, just so you know, theater superstitious people, the Scottish play. The director, doing some announcements before the show started, gave a land acknowledgement, acknowledging that we were on the ancestral lands of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag people. And this is a gesture that a lot of groups are making these days, and we do it occasionally here. It recognizes the history of genocide, where we are, and in colonizing. Well, about an hour into the show, a young white man who had been wandering on the common and shouting, we couldn't hear him because he was sort of a movable unit of distraction, parked himself right in the middle of the big aisle of lawn chairs in front of the stage and started yelling at us, disrupting the show, trying to stop the show, calling us white racists, colonizers, and ranting, "Do you know where you are? You're on Boston Common. You are disgusting. You don't have any idea. You are the bourgeoisie. You're just here for entertainment," and so forth. The details were kind of fuzzy, but it was a denunciation. This was very clearly his intention. Now, I assume that this is a person with mental health struggles, serious emotional dysregulation and impulse control issues. He was literally carried out of the park by the police. I don't know if he was arrested for disturbing the peace or whatever, but his mental instability aside, his actions were actually a very dramatic version of what happens when people who think they have the particular interests of a particular community in mind can create toxic space because of the way they conduct their agenda of righteousness. I don't ever like to reduce human beings to metaphors, but this situation really kind of functioned in that way for me. I mean, I feel for this guy, for whatever he's going through, and I know that there are many more productive ways to make, to work on building awareness and justice. But in trying to bring the crowd's attention to the fact that we were on sacred ground, or ground that represented suffering for many peoples, he actually desecrated the sacred space of the theater, of people coming together in community to experience the arts together. And also, despite his accusations, it was not a white space. It was actually a very diverse gathering of people, not just in the audience, but on stage. So this man's need to enlighten and correct everyone actually made the reality that we were in not visible and real to him. Like I said, he was his own mobile unit of upset space, of disturbed space. Because if we move into where we are, into the spaces we inhabit, only attentive to our own vision and our own certainties, we will always move in ignorance and we will always cause harm. It's sobering. I was so sure she was ripping up my garden. I didn't see. We are all moving energy centers, powerfully affecting our environments for good or sometimes for ill by our conscious and unconscious choices. It's an incredible opportunity and also incredible responsibility. Our church is an environment, one that is constantly changing. Of late, because of the Stanley School Project, it is changing in particularly noticeable external ways, which introduces at least two important considerations for us today and into the next months and years. First, as our external environment changes, how will we want to influence the sense of space that's now going to be part of the daily landscape of children and their parents and the school community as they go back and forth to school? Interesting. We're going to be a conscious part, probably, although many people will kind of drive by and go, oh yeah, that building, I wonder what kind of weird stuff they do there. But it will be more of a conscious part of their landscape, and that's an interesting opportunity, or it's a thing. Second, as the sacred space of our church building and properties change due to factors beyond our control, and we adjust and create a renewed sense of mission together in response to that and other societal factors also beyond our control, how will we ourselves, as leadership teams, as individuals, and faithful people, move into the sacred space of deliberation, discernment, and shared ministry? The Board of Trustees is having a retreat this afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m. when they will be talking about our renewed sense of mission and what's coming next. And so that's some of the work they will be doing, but they represent all of the congregation, all of this community, and so it is work that we will all be taking up together. So this is the invitation put to us. Where is my little basket? It's right there. Okay. The question put to us and the spiritual practice recommended to us. what kind of moving energy center shall I be? How and why shall I be that? Everybody take one of these little stones. Or they're like little shells and sea glass. Let the stone you're holding, or the sea glass or the shell, represent the many spaces we inhabit. You may focus on one, particularly the church, or as many as you like. What energy, what quality of presence do I bring to this space? Take a moment to meditate on that. Allow the object in your hand to absorb your intention of what kind of space you yourself would like to be and to create. And when you are ready, we'll mingle them all together in this vessel at the front of the sanctuary. But let's have a little bit of music to help us do that. And I'm going to take one myself. You may choose a few key words to describe the kind of presence you want to be, so that you can remember them and return to them as a touchstone, as a sort of a mantra when you are in spaces. It's lovely to have these mingled together. They're aspirational. We won't be perfect in living up to them and into them. But we have identified some of our touchstones of how we want to be present in this space and other spaces. And may we manifest that.